Welcome back to Sika Strength and welcome back to the Sika Stand News Show. Today's news show is brought to you by the Sika Strength Back Squat Clinic. The last Saturday in November of this year, we'll be doing a back squat clinic, which will take about 2.5 hours in London, in Epsom, in CrossFit is Epsom or Ascension training, and we'll be doing about a 2.5 hour squat clinic. I'll go for a heavy single, we'll go through some practical sessions and some theory with you guys. We'll get you squatting, get you the theory going, and hopefully you can take away then some knowledge for the back squat, whether you're looking to improve it for weightlifting, for powerlifting, for sport, whatever it is you're trying to get better at squatting for, we'll be able to help you out with that. Now, first up on today's news show, we have got some golden footage. We've got the heaviest ever footage of Xiaojun on camera making a successful squat. And this is 280 kilos for a double. You may also recognize the 300 kilos failed attempt directly after this from a CCTV footage released a couple of years ago, probably over 10 years ago at this stage. This is from 2015, okay, so 9 years ago. And this 280 kilos for a double is both the heaviest single and double we have from Xiaojun. We've seen 275 kilos pretty frequently from some training hall videos and maybe from some clips of Xiaojun training, but this 280 for double is somewhat historic for us because we've never seen Liu squat heavier than this and make a successful attempt. Now, the online record of Xiaojun's best back squat is 305 kilos, and I believe Xiaojun could definitely squat 305 kilos as a 77 kilo weightlifter. Now, really interesting about this particular squat and this 280 kilos for a double, and you'll see Xiaojun leaning into something that we see a lot of athletes leaning into, especially weightlifters when they're high bar squatting, is leaning into more extension, and they'll often lead this with a chin up and head back posture. Now, they don't do this on the way down generally. They'll keep their head quite loose or quite neutral on the descent of the squat. But then as they squat up, you'll see them leaning into this extension by lifting the chin. So this is to keep that back in a better position and stop the barbell moving forward. And as a result, stop the back hinging forward, those hips moving backwards and failing the squat. And if we can keep that chin up and more extension, we'll generally have a better back squat. Because one of the main enemies in the high bar squat is that upper back rounding. And you'll see Liu destroying this 280 kilos for a double as a 77, which, when you think about it, is insane. Now, here we've got the Colombian speed demon, Luis Mosquera, hang snatching 160 kilos. Remember, he's a 73 kilo weightlifter. And this is definitely one of the heaviest hang snatches we've seen relative to body weight in a very long time. I can't particularly think of one heavier until Archie Mokilov's 190 kilos hang snatch. This 160 kilos, in typical fashion by Mr. Mosquera, is blisteringly fast. It's so pleasing to look at. We haven't seen Lewis in such great form since kind of pre-2016 Rio Olympic Games. He's fallen off a little bit since then. He didn't have a fantastic performance at Paris just gone or in Tokyo. He's still lifting amazing weights, of course, but he was really on the rise up when he was going from a junior lifter to a senior lifter, and we haven't quite seen him hit the same numbers again. So I'm hoping this 160 kilo hang snatch is marking something pretty big for Worlds this year in Bahrain. So they have about another 3 months or so of a good training block, and to be hitting this far out is really reassuring because I'm a big fan of Lewis and I really like to see him smashing this in competition. And judging by how well this is, it is unbelievably quick. This is one of the fastest snatches you'll ever see from anyone, is Mr. Mosquera destroying some snatches. Now here we've got some rather rare footage of weightlifters jumping, but more specifically a female elite level weightlifter jumping 41 inches on the box jump for repetitions. This is brought to us by Larior, and this is Xiaojun. I feel like I basically nailed that name. She's doing this, from what she said, was punishing from Coach Yi after a training, but as Larior said, she seems to be enjoying herself. Box jumps for weightlifting are very, very interesting exercise. They can be quite useful, as they can be for many athletes. But the interesting thing here is that we don't often see female athletes doing a lot of jumping. We'll see sporadically some professional male weightlifters jumping, and it's very typically incredibly impressive, very, very casual, some very high heights. You know, we're thinking of South Korean weightlifters jumping. We're looking at the Russian weightlifting team jumping, generally for repetitions, sometimes for fun, for a max single they'll do on the box jump, but we don't often get to see the capacity for female elite weightlifters jumping. And to be honest with you, anything over 40 inches or so on the box jump is massively impressive. Male or female, heavy or large, whatever it is. If you're getting into those 40 inches plus on the box jump, it is a massively interesting style of box jump. It's a very, very impressive style, a very, very impressive height that you can be hitting on the box jump. So this is a really interesting look into just the capacity of some elite level female weightlifters on the box jump. Now here we have the Egyptian stallion Mahmoud Hosni. I feel like that's not correct, But what is correct is how much he destroys this 290 kilo back squat. Mahmoud is a younger lifter. We saw a 270 a couple of months ago from him, which was beautiful, very, very nice, very aesthetic, very easy. But he's absolutely blown us away with this 290 kilos. Looking at this, I have to imagine his max is somewhere in the region of 310, maybe 315 if he's got a grinder in him, if he's a good style of lifter who can push through those heavy singles. But this 290 should, I hope, emasculate your heavy back squat singles, no matter who you are and what your back squat is. If you're a weightlifter and you're watching this section of the news show, just use this as motivation later. If you're squatting on a Monday, which I hope you are, and you are thinking, you know, my 180 back squat's not so bad, or my 200 kilo back squat's not so bad. I got my stamp for Sika. But then you see someone like this, you see Mahmoud do 290 like this, and then you should be thinking, you know what, I fucked up and I need to back squat more. Because that's certainly what I'm thinking. Mahmoud is a great weightlifter as well. The Egyptian team are really coming into their own. They seem to have quite a broad spectrum across the weight classes currently lifting. So it'll be interesting this year at Worlds if they're able to show up and lift some weights in Bahrain as well. Now, here we go. So we've got Rahmat Erwin lifting at what seems to be some kind of sports expo in Indonesia. And he's lifting as a 73 kilo lifter here. And he works up to some pretty casual lifts for him. He snatched 153 kilos and clean and jerked 192 kilos. Now, Rahmat, of course, missed his chance at this year's Olympics, probably missed out on a gold realistically by missing a clean and jerk in Thailand just as the last qualifier for the Paris Games. And I really hope he's on a villain arc here. People are talking about Marin Robu's villain arc, which could be happening, but I really hope Rahmat is on a villain arc because I want to see him destroy some big clean and jerks, which I know he has in him. So these are very casual lifts. This is a pretty easy training day for him. I would say these are 90% or probably even a little bit less depending on where he's operating at the moment. You can see in this 192 that very routine, very, very casual, and I assume he is going to be absolutely destroying some big weights later this year, hopefully trying to make a statement, or that's what I'm hoping from a lot of those weightlifters. The 153 kilos is a very good snatch for him. He's typically a better clean and jerker in competition from what we see, so should he be able to increase that snatch, which he's definitely a very good snatcher also, bring those numbers up to the mid 160s, and then hopefully take those clean and jerks in the mid to early 200s, which he's definitely capable of doing. You know, he's done that 204 kilo clean and jerk in competition. So if he can push that snatch a little bit better, then improve that clean and jerk to what he's definitely capable of doing, he should be able to edge out a little bit his compatriot Rizki, who also lifted in this competition, but as an 89 kilo lifter. So remember, Rizki is the gold medalist from Paris in the 73 kilo category, and he jumped 2 categories up to the 89 kilo category. Now, I would assume this is an indication just how much some weightlifters cut in regards to their competitions. Now, he ended up snatching, clean and jerking pretty casual for him, pretty sub-maximal. You'll see this 146 here, this 160 kilos here. Again, you know, pretty routine for him, judging by what we've seen him do in competition and in training. So this 160 looks quite nice. The clean and jerks are very, very sharp as well. Like, he's really not an 89 looking at this video, but it is interesting. He probably trains quite heavy into the late 70s or early 80s in training. And sometimes in weightlifting, even though we do see it is a 2-hour weigh-in until competition, it's very, very interesting how much some weightlifters can cut and still maintain a good performance. And we'll often see this with the lighter weightlifters, that they are capable of cutting big weights but still having good competition. You can see in this 200 kilos here, it doesn't look any easier or any more crazy easier that we would have seen him as a 73. So it's not really a full move into that 89 kilo weight class here. It's probably just he weighs a little bit heavier. He normally cuts a couple of kilos down to the 73s, and as a result then he ended up weighing probably somewhere lighter part of the 89 kilo weight class. And I'm sure he's enjoying the break from probably keeping his calories somewhat restricted. So 160, 200, a pretty casual 360 total for Rizki here. So next up, we've got Tian Tao's baby brother, Pan YunHua, who's not actually Tian Tao's brother. It's just a bit of a joke that he's referred to himself, or other people have referred to as him. He did a local competition recently, or a national competition from what I can see, and he said, normal condition, next time I'll fight to get 100%. So I assume that's referring to some form of injury he's probably experiencing at the moment. He snatched 158 kilos and clean and jerked 200 kilos. Both have looked pretty solid. His snatch is very, very good and his clean is good, but it's hard to tell sometimes with heavier squat jerkers just how much more capacity is there for them in the tank. I don't know what style of injury he's holding back or what's afflicting him here, if he just wasn't in particularly amazing shape. The 200 kilo clean looks pretty routine for him, and certainly 10-15 more kilos there for him, but the squat jerk is hard to tell just how good he is at those heavier weights. You may have seen from his older brother Tian Tao that sometimes those squat jerkers can be perfect and there's no problem, and then we get a little bit heavier and we see the wheels really fall off. So it'll be interesting to watch Pan as he develops. He's a very young lifter and he's still a teenager now and will be for another couple of years. So I'd say the best thing to do here is watch this space and see just what he ends up hitting as he gets older, because these are some big lifts at the moment. Here we've got Rezi from Team Georgia, who's typically an 89 kilo lifter. He didn't make the Olympics this year, but he's doing a 210 kilo block double from just above the knee. Now this is massively impressive. There's a very, very heavy weight to be doubling. Typically high block cleans for most lifters is a harder lift to achieve from. Now I know some of you may be thinking of Toshiki block cleaning 230 kilos, but he's generally in the minority there. Most lifters will find it a little bit harder to move block cleans or heavier block cleans compared to their max better, because you have less time to generate enough speed for the barbell. Generally, the contact point is lower in the block clean or in the clean in general compared to the snatch. So we have a shorter distance to get up to that max speed and get enough speed on the barbell to get under it. But you can see here, Rezi is making absolutely mince meat of these 210 kilo cleans. I'd be very interested to know what his best clean from blocks is, or his best clean and jerk is from the floor. These 210 for a double certainly looks like he is possible or capable of clean and jerking 220 kilos, or at least cleaning 220 kilos, judging by how easy the first rep looked. He's a great lifter. He's quite a nice technician, and he is kind of one of the stalwarts of the Georgian weightlifting team. So again, I assume he's training hard for Bahrain later this year. So he might be looking to put a bit of his mark on the 89 kilo class. I suspect he has a 220 clean and jerk in him at some point, whether that be in training or in competition. The interesting thing for him, though, is does he have that snatch in him? Realistically, if he's going to put a big mark on the weight class, and I assume he is, he's in the Georgian national team, containing some great weightlifters, notably Lasha. He's going to need something like a 175 snatch, and I think he's capable of that in training, maybe from blocks, maybe from the hang, but is he capable of doing that in competition? I'm not sure. I hold some reservation around that, but it will be interesting to see him develop. He's still a pretty young lifter. The 89 kilo class is a move up for him. So I am watching him with interest, and it'll be very interesting, hopefully, to see what he manifests later this year and as the next Olympic quad goes on for LA. Oscar Garcias, I assume that's how you say it. He's a Colombian weightlifter, typically a 102 lifter, and he is quite young, and he smashes this 205 kilo clean and jerk. He makes it absolutely routine. I'd highly recommend you go follow Oscar, as he typically puts up a lot of very sharp, very technically pleasing lifts. And as you've heard us talk about before in regards to mirror neurons, and when you're trying to learn different aspects of weightlifting or anything, watching better lifters and having more of them on your phone, in your feed, can help you become a better lifter, and watching worse lifters can make you actually a little bit worse. So it's in your own interest to go watch people like Oscar. This 205 kilos is pretty sub-maximal for him. This seems to be some kind of test event for the Colombian team, and this 205, pretty routine. We've seen him clean and jerk something like 212 or so before in competition. Don't necessarily know what his best clean and jerk is, but I wouldn't be surprised to see something like 215 kilos. He's a very sharp lifter. If you watch his training lifts, all of those lifts, whether it be the strict press or the back squat, all the way to his power clean or his hang power snatches, whatever he's doing, he does with a lot of precision, a lot of consistency, and that's what makes for a great weightlifter. Oftentimes you'll have these talents. You'll have people like Carlos Nazar who are wild and amazing and have genetic freaks, and they lift as the way they lift. But for the rest of us, we're looking at being precise, repeatable, consistent, technical perfection. And you can kind of see this emulated in Oscar's lifting, or at least that's what I get from his training, and just how sharp he lifts. And this 205, I hope, gives you just an indicator of how sharp a lifter he is. So hopefully we'll see more from him in the future. Here is a lift you are not expecting, and I was not expecting this. This is a Greek weightlifter who competed in the 2008 Olympics as a 94. He came 10th. His name is Tassos Triantafylou. I probably said that wrong. But here he is squatting 400 kilos high bar. This was just over 6 years ago, or just over 5.5 years ago. This was a PB from a long time in his life, he said, or that's what I'm getting from the translation. A kind viewer sent this in because we were talking about Hagen Henderson a few weeks ago squatting 400 or 375 kilos high bar. We talked about Martzim having the heaviest back squat in weightlifting so far from a 400 kilo squat. And then they sent this in of this Greek lifter squatting 400 kilos. And as you can see here, this is high bar, full depth. His ass seems to be touching his calves. This is amazing. SPD knee sleeves, powerlifting belts. And the weird thing in it, it didn't look majorly maximum. So this is a 400 kilo squat that I'd never heard about. And this is the crazy thing about weightlifting or different sports, is that on social media, we actually get to see things like this. Now, there's probably not too many 400 kilo high bar squats that we haven't seen from weightlifters, but this is one of those gems that appears so every so often. And it's the great thing about the new show and people sending in stuff is we get to see things like this. So even though it's a couple of years ago, it's not necessarily news. It's certainly news to me, and it's probably news to a lot of you guys. If we watch this 400 kilo squat again, you'll see he's probably not a 94 kilo lifter anymore. I don't know what his body weight is, and honestly I don't particularly care because it's a 400 kilo high bar squat and he is burying this. So nice wide squat, gives lots of room for his hip. Obviously a lot of upper back mass and upper body mass, so he's able to support that weight without squeezing it too much. So we move out to that wider position, which is interesting because it'll feel better on heavier lifters' mobility, but it does reduce a bit of that support. Again, crazy lift, 400 kilos, and he's absolutely destroying this. So, you know, go check out the rest of his profile because there's like some 180 kilo power cleans there, and he is moving the barbell outrageously fast. John Haack, or Bill Boswagens, is at it again. He deadlifted 415 kilos or 915 pounds in training. I'm sure this is a training PB. Now, we've seen him do 420 kilos in competition just this year. And at that time, the heaviest training lift we saw from him was at 410, which was a PB in the animal cage. So this 415 kilos in training is a very good indicator, I think, for a lot of us, because this competition that John is doing soon is coming up in the next 3 weeks or so. John is also qualifying for a strongman event on top of that training, so he's just cementing himself as the GOAT. This 415 kilos, again, as we always say in typical John Haack fashion, is smooth, consistency is there, his technique doesn't break down. The barbell slows down, but his technique doesn't break. And if you want to be one of the best lifters you can be in strength training, it is consistency of technique, not losing technique at the expense of speed. Now, if you can go faster with the same technique, you obviously should go ahead and do that because that'll make for better quality lifting or better weights. But your primary mover or your primary goal all the time when you're lifting is perfect technique. And now the strength lifts often get seen as, you know, just pull the deadlift, squat, bench, whatever. But there's a lot of technique to those. And it's not so much that the technique is entirely complex, it's that it's very hard to maintain certain parts of that lift. Maybe it's your upper back, maybe it's your hip position, maybe it's your elbow position in the bench. Whatever that is, maintaining these positions, while simple to follow, are difficult at heavy weights. And if you want to move heavier weights with consistency and better quality and have reliable PBs in the future and have more in the tank when you hit a PB now, having consistency of technique at the expense of slight bit of barbell speed, you're going to be better off in the long run. So even in the short run, if it takes a few kilos off your max right now, or your 3RM or your 5RM, whatever that is, in the future, you're still going to be better off if you're still aiming for a consistent, better quality technique. And John Haack is one of these lifters who emulates this. We just never see any major technical breakdown. So are we going to see a 425 deadlift or more? I would be absolutely blown away by that. I hope a lot of people are ready to see something big. Ivan Makarov strong with a 512 kilo low block deadlift. So this is 1.9 inch pads, as he says in the caption. He said, "I really hope I can achieve my dream that I've been pursuing for many years." Now, Ivan Makarov is obviously well known for his deadlifting capacity, and this 512 is certainly one of the heaviest and lowest lifts we've ever seen, if that makes sense to you. We've obviously seen, you know, there's big trap bar deadlifts, there's big sumo block deadlifts, there's big sumo deadlifts, but I don't think we've seen anyone just move a barbell from a lower block position like this at 512 kilos. He's probably aiming or hoping to aim to break that 501 kilo marker. How much does he get out of this 1.9 inches is anyone's guess, and competition will reveal all, which is a great thing about competitions like this. So when we see massive lifts, massive super world records lifts like this, we're still left with wondering how much difference does this make, especially in variations like this. Is he getting 20 kilos out of this? Is he getting 5 kilos out of this? Is he getting absolutely nothing out of this but psychological benefit of knowing that he's at slightly just under 2 inches above the floor, and in reality it's not making a whole difference? Or does it, when it gets to 512 kilos, is that 1.9 inches literally adding 12 to 15 kilos from that? Again, as I say, we won't know until competition rolls around, and Ivan is certainly an interesting figure. He generates a lot of social media engagement. So seeing him break something plus north of that 501 kilos would be very interesting. Next up, we've got Kyle Kolbe squatting 800 pounds or 363 kilos for a pause squat double. Now, you've seen Kyle on the new show before, and not to talk schmack, but the pauses are generous on this 800 pound squats, okay? So 800 pounds for a double on the squat is absolutely gargantuan. Any kind of double or any kind of single or any kind of squat at 800 pounds or 363 kilos is massive. First one, definitely a pause. Second one's a little bit funny. But as I say, this is a crazy lift from Kyle. He's a very, very strong all-round lifter, but his squats typically are something that are very, very routinely amazing. He needs to probably start squatting with calibrated plates if possible, because he's going to get caught for just room on that barbell as he gets heavier on the squat. Obviously, on top of that then as well, the feel of the barbell, when it gets very, very heavy, if we have uncalibrated plates or thicker than normal plates, there's going to be a different kind of whip, and it's going to be in his own interest, of course, which he obviously knows in regards to training is going to make a big difference to how the squat feels, and you want to train as close to competition as possible, which is one of the great things, I think, for powerlifting in the last couple of years, is that we've just seen a host of powerlifting equipped specialist gyms. Not super common, not by any means. They're not like Fly Fits or Pure Gyms or anything like that around the place, but we're definitely seeing some more powerlifting gyms available or more powerlifting clubs in certain countries, and that's better for those athletes to train with that equipment and have some more specialized equipment and safer, more practical sport specific performance. So it'll be interesting to see what Kyle ends up hitting in competition, or even just what he hits in a single in the coming future. Now here we've got Ben the Don Strong. He is a French strongman, and this is a 365 kilo deadlift. He is a lighter strongman, so he's in a double digits body weight. Not sure exactly what he is here, but he is ripped at the moment, and this 365 kilos without a belt is a massive lift for him. Now, we've seen some big pulls from him, but one of my favorite things about Ben's technique is his technique. So the angles he keeps, he's very reminiscent of John Haack, who's another fantastic deadlifter in terms of technique and of weight. But the positions we'll see here, a couple of things. Toes straight forward is one of our favorite aspects of deadlifting. It's not that toes out isn't something that won't work, but frequently we see that we're trying to bring those knees forward, incline that shin angle just a little bit, not massively, but just some small forward inclination of the angle makes a huge difference in that pull off the floor and the speed you can get, and then the consistency and strength you get through that second pull. If we're still using our legs, it makes a massive difference. And so that toes forward position allows us to get our knees just a little bit further forward. In the deadlift, we're not really worried about getting our knees out of the way, which is why that toes out position might be used, for example, in weightlifting, in the snatch, the clean. It'll help those knees just be slightly out to the side, so it makes it a small bit easier for our knees to be out of the way in that position. But in deadlifting, we're not particularly worried about that. We have time to move those knees in the right sequence, so that toes forward position really allows us to pull into a position where we're using our legs maximally from the floor. And if you're conventional deadlifting, it's one of the advantages you want to take a part of. Next up, we've got Hagen Henderson. Just as we were talking a couple of minutes ago about heavy high bar squats, he competed in the Reach Rumble, which is the abs powerlifting series, and he squatted 422.5 kilos. Hagen, as you know from Moz, is an amazing squatter, and now he lifted some other big benches and squat, but I really just wanted to take a look at the quality of his low bar squat here at 422.5 kilos at the Reach Rumble in the US. This is a massive squat, and you'll see him looking at the scoreboard after to see if he's white lights, but I think we'll all agree that there's absolutely no doubt about the quality of this squat and the depth in regards to Hagen's lifting. He's consistently an amazing squatter, and he's really putting that up there in competition. So 422.5. You may remember him from 2 new shows ago where he squatted high bar 375 kilos. So this 422.5 kilo squat is fantastic. He does a lot of great things about that, but you'll see he's still a very quad dominant lifter, even though he's moving to that low bar position. And interestingly, he's one of those use cases where we talk about generally those heavier lifters squatting those heaviest high bar weights often will feel a little bit better with flats in their shoes, so without that elevated heel. So you'll see them put them off balance just a little bit. Now, it's not always the case, but certainly for some heavier low bar squatters, heavier in terms of body weight, but also heavier in terms of the actual weight on the barbell. The flat shoe generally feels a little bit better for him, a little bit more stable. Some lifters will find it harder to keep their balance from shifting too far forward. We might see the heels elevating slightly because the weight has been shifted too far forward, because if that low bar tips you forward, you'll find that that weight shifts too far forward. And obviously, as a low bar squat is pretty heavy, we want the opposite of that. We want to shorten that lever of our back. And so if that barbell is moving forward, we're kind of defeating the point of doing the low bar squat. And so sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes certainly, there's some individuals who do benefit from that flat shoe position. And then obviously the rest of Hagen squat could be taken apart. But for the sake of the new show, let's just enjoy this 422.5 kilo squat. Next up, we've got that huge Asian, or Andy Huang. So he is squatting 300 kilos for 4 reps in the pause squat. These also look to be high bar from my point of view, and he's definitely burying these squats as well. Andy is a unit. That's why he's called that huge Asian. Interestingly enough, just as we were talking about squatting in flats on the previous video from Hagen Henderson, you'll see Andy is another one of those huge individuals who often will feel just a little bit better in the flat shoes. And even though he seems to be squatting high bar, very quad dominant style squat, you'll see for him, he seems to favor just those flat shoes in that position. And super legit pauses here. Obviously 300 kilos for pauses, 300 kilo high bar, anything is massive, but 300 kilos for 4 in the pause is particularly massive. And he is a well-rounded lifter and puts up some huge lifts in competition. So great to see this kind of quality of squatting going on in the powerlifting community. Here we've got the athlete section of the new show. We've got James Harrison. So he's a former American football player, and he's 46 years old. He's 6 foot, and his weight was allegedly 110 kilos before, but he looks every bit of this walking around here in the training. I'm not sure what he's doing in the Steelers training camp. Someone said that he shouldn't even be allowed in there, but I don't particularly understand the politics of what's going on there. But the one thing to be clear is they don't test you in retirement. So he is looking absolutely like a unit. There's not a whole lot to discuss on this one. I thought it was just too funny to pass up. If anyone's any information on James Harrison, I'd be very interested to see that. Or if there's any training footage out of them, I must go look for it. But he is making the athletes in the background look like absolute children, who I assume they are not children. James just happens to be an absolute monster. So mostly just an appreciation on this particular post for a unit. Now here we have something Dara's going to be missing out. This is Kolbe of the South African Springboks rugby team smashing Scott Barnett, the bigger of the Barnett brothers. And look, there's a big weight difference between them, and if things had gone different, would Scott Barnett have probably smashed Kolbe? Maybe. Kolbe has taken and given some big hits. He is certainly one of the fastest rugby players playing international rugby at the moment, but he is definitely one of the strongest, and don't let that 76 kilos body weight below you. He is a monster. He's a freak athlete. In my opinion, definitely one of the most freakiest athletes at the moment playing international rugby. Kolbe routinely destroys kind of wider tries. He's super fast, reads the game really well, and unfortunately for Scott Barnett, got put in his ass from him here. You can see Scott went down for the wrap, but Kolbe obviously using his power to his advantage, but also his technique. So a lot of this comes down from timing, technical advantage, but having a well-rounded physicality behind him. Kolbe was able to put Scott in his bum, and I'm sure Scott won't live that down from the rest of the team. And it's a harsh lesson, unfortunately. The South African team are big fans of their S&C. They spend a lot of time in training camp, and the physicality they present in sport is massive. Obviously, as an Irish rugby fan, I'm not big fans of Springbok rugby, but you do have to appreciate as an S&C coach and a sports pundit that the Springboks do a lot of things right, and if they keep doing a lot of things right, they're probably going to win another World Cup in 3 years' time, 3 years' time. So hopefully that doesn't happen and Ireland get their shit together. But in the meantime, appreciating Kolbe smashing someone 50 odd kilos heavier than him is very impressive. Lastly, we've got Tyson, who is a Haitian shot putter, but also seems to be some kind of WWE style wrestler. So his name is actually Tyson WWE, and he is again a freak athlete. I don't know what weight Tyson is, But Tyson is not double digits body weight. He is certainly north of 120 kilos. And you'll see once again why we always say throwers are some of the most impressive athletes in the world, and they often don't get enough credit for just how impressive some of their ability is, especially in the explosive nature of the lift they do in the gym. And some of their athletic feats like this. You'll see him jumping 4 hurdles straight into a sprint. Now, the hurdle height, probably 30 odd inches, and doing that for a repetition, so repeated bout effort, is massive. And I would urge you to give this a go at home. The funny thing about jumping, the heavier you get, the more impressive it gets. So as a heavier athlete here, this is massively impressive. And repeated bout efforts like this are incredibly useful for most sports. And if you're doing any kind of plyometric training, whether that be from a weightlifter to a badminton player to a shot putter here, repeated bout efforts like this simply means repeated efforts. So not maximal single bouts, but repeated similar bouts are very, very useful for training a lot of the fast twitch nature of the sport you're probably trying to improve. They make incredible use of something known as a stretch shortening cycle. You've probably heard us talk about a lot about this, but this is about a physiological skill and a skill that is well trained and that needs to be practiced based on technique. So you can be very good at certain parts of the explosive nature of some jumping or plyometric ability, but then if you're new to a different style of technique, it's very, very useful to practice that. But then on the other end of that, in terms of plyometric training, very interestingly, we'll see someone who's good at jumping in one aspect is generally good at jumping in a lot of different aspects, which is why plyometric training can be both varied but very specific for sports because the benefits are universal. Lastly, then, the quality of the sprints right after him is not to be ignored. You can see head down, accelerating, really nice leg and arm movement, synchronicity, and you'd hate to see him running at you on a rugby pitch. Very interesting show hailing from Haiti. So very, very impressive jumping here. I had to include this. So thank you for everyone who includes stuff in the news show. Please do keep sending in stuff like this to the news show from the athletic side of things. So a lot of you are great for sending weightlifting and powerlifting stuff, which is fantastic, but I know there's a load more stuff like this on the internet, so I would make a call today to finish the news show to keep sending stuff like this because I love seeing it. There was things like the Alaskan 2-leg jump just a couple of weeks ago. Someone sent that in. We would have never seen that, and I love that stuff. So if you do see stuff like this, if you're sitting on it and you're thinking, would the lads like it, do send it in. If whatever sport, whatever athlete, they're doing a gym lift or some kind of training like this, please send it in. I'll filter through it. I look through all of them, and I'm very appreciative of that. Myself and Dara and I are very appreciative of that. So please do keep sending those in because I love seeing stuff like this. And I hope you enjoyed today's news show. And Dara will be back next week. I might not be here next week, unfortunately. I'm going on a holiday, a well-deserved holiday if I do say so myself. So if I don't record a new show before I go, I'll be gone for a week. But the videos won't stop. You'll see them there. And I will be on the west coast of France, enjoying life, which I am. And thank you to guys for everyone who supports Sika Strength just in general. We're putting a lot of work, obviously, into videos lately, and we're trying to make them as clickbaitless and as training information full as possible. And I know you guys love the new show and we love doing it, and we won't stop anytime in the near future. So check out the Sika Strength app, and if you can make it down to our squat clinic, we'd be glad to have you. I love showing off in front of a crowd, so the more of you come, the more likely I am to squat heavier.